Hi, my name's Hannah Stang, and I am in Moberly, Missouri. And I'd like to go over the opportunities we had this week to watch some presentations with regard to our counseling class. The first presentation up had to address some boyfriend issues. The counselor allowed the young woman to express her feelings. He didn't say a lot. Right at first. He had some great open-ended questions and got her to progress through the conversation where she was comfortable. And as she began to get comfortable, then he started to address the feelings, and then later on he moved a little bit forward into the meaning. And while this was well done, he did a really good job. There were some things I didn't hear. Okay, I didn't hear that they were exactly her words. Some of the words that he was saying were more like his words, such as he was saying disappointed, guilty, angry, and she did agree with the anger, but in her own words, she was saying that it was more like not being understood, where he used running away. He used disappointed, she used guilty. So perhaps he could have taken maybe one step back and made sure that their words were more aligned a little bit. I could see how that's easy to do, though. I really see that. The second scenario that we looked at was addressing a car incident. Okay, this one I could relate to. I'd been in the same situation, so I could understand how upset the gentleman was at the time. But she greeted him by name. She related to a conversation that they had earlier in the day, and although she didn't make any comment on, any kind of a medical condition or the Band-Aid that was on his hand, because he did have that Band-Aid there, she was sensitive and trying to be empathetic, so much so that she reached out and touched him. I can understand and appreciate that, because it occurred to me sort of like the afterthought that he was getting pretty much wrapped up in the moment. It was a good way to ground him, yeah, but and she brought him right back into the present. However, let's just say she didn't know that much about his history. He could have gone psychotic on her. Matter of boundaries issues. Some people don't like you to touch him. So I did see that. She was really kind and empathetic, sympathy, but I wondered, instead of touching him, could she have offered him another option, like maybe a Kleenex, although he wasn't crying, but there are some other ways to bring a person down to the present moment, for lack of a better word there. I didn't see that she was really able to put a lot of meaning into it. I think it was more of a physical thing of him being in the present more than anything else. But I did appreciate how she called him by name and tied everything together for him. Didn't make it really too hard on him. So going on to the third one was the young lady that felt sort of responsible for everyone's happiness. In that scenario, I saw that the helper, his name was Mark, didn't do a lot of interrupting again. He allowed her to talk and process through some of the questions that he was inserting in their conversation, which were all open-ended again, and allowed her to stay on the same page. He kept making sure that he was following along and she was following along, and it made for not only great dialogue, but the communication model was exemplary, I think, when they were speaking. One of the other things was that he kept saying, "Did I hear you correctly?" And she was assuring him yes, that he was, but it was a little bit too much like yes, 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 too sterile, almost too neatly packaged. Not a lot of more natural, and maybe more natural details here. What I saw in the last one was more of a what I called the cultural sandwich. Being from Arizona, really familiar with the culture out there. And what the gentleman said was really, really, really true. But he was allowed to share the story, and I really appreciated how the counselor said that, I don't know that much about that. It showed that he was being teachable, and it gave them a point where they could mutually receive in the process of, the counseling process. He did a really great job too. None of the others presentations had. He did an excellent job of synthesizing. He took the details and the factors that the young man had told him, which were basically the culture, the importance of the family, systems. I'm assuming that he was talking about governmental systems, past history in their family, and young man wanting to have a life of his own while they're sharing the same home. He did a good job of synthesizing it, and he brought it all out into the wording of balancing act. Once again, although it wasn't a young man's wording, it was very appropriate. It did fit. So he used the skills that he had as a counselor. Obviously, he's experienced and well versed in what he's doing, but the gentleman didn't tie up with a lot of meaning with what the balancing act would mean for him, as in a couple of the other ones. I saw a lot of the good in the presentations that we were able to see or were available to us. I did see a lot of the techniques used. A few of them were not used, but for the most part, they were pretty good. As far as, did I review this as far as being a for real type of counseling situation? In some ways, yes, because the topics were more daily. They were more normal. They didn't present any crisis situations, which is not to say that they don't occur in counseling, but still. There was listening on both sides. I did appreciate that as far as it being a for real type of scenario. And I think the thing that was really most surprising that I found in them was the length that it took in the conversation for them to establish meaning. As far as why I didn't see that they were realistic conversations is the environment and the setting, the furniture, which was similar on all of them, and the details in the conversation. Usually when people talk, it's not always so neat, so clear-cut and finely detailed. There's usually a little sloppy overlap, and I didn't see any of that in there. So as far as I'm being realistic without the sloppy overlap and the natural effects, no, that wasn't there. But the procedures, the steps, the professionalism on both sides, yeah, that was somewhat realistic. Well, thank you very much, and look forward to looking at your videos.